The natural world is filled with wonders, from cascading waterfalls to verdant forests, and is a precious part of our planet that should be protected and experienced in equal measure. However, while our natural environment is often put under threat from human activity, the danger goes both ways. Humans are not invulnerable to the hazards of the natural world, and every year people lose their lives in encounters with wild predators. Today we will see some of the horrific animal attacks that have been registered across the world. Number 10. Charla Nash. The only non-fatal animal attack to make it on the list, Charla Nash's stomach churning injuries have become famous. In February of 2009, the 55-year-old was in the cage of a 200-pound pet chimpanzee named Travis. The chimp was owned by her friend and employer Sandra Harold. When Travis attacked Nash, Harold was unable to fight him off with a knife and called the police. In a recording of the 911 call, Harold can be heard screaming, "He's eating her." When police arrived at the scene, they shot Travis several times before he was subdued. By the time paramedics were able to treat her on the scene, Nash had sustained devastating injuries and was barely clinging to life. Her hands, eyes, nose and lips were bitten off and eaten. Number 9. Timothy Treadwell. The remains of Timothy Treadwell and his girlfriend Amy Hugh Geenard were found in the Katmai National Park in Alaska in October of 2003 as a result of animal attacks. Treadwell was dubbed Grizzly Man, an eco-warrior who campaigned for the conservation of bears. He was also known for his unusual desire to live among them in the wild. Katmai National Park is home to roughly 3,000 Native American brown bears, and Treadwell filmed close-up encounters with several of them in the days before his death. Willie Fulton, an air taxi pilot who was scheduled to pick them up that day, arrived at the campsite and found it to be empty. He noticed a bear lingering nearby and immediately contacted the park rangers. The couple's mangled remains were uncovered rapidly upon investigation. Treadwell's disfigured head, partial spine, as well as ideal lower arm as well as hand, with his wristwatch still on, were recouped a short distance from the camp. Huguenard's partial remains were located beside the torn as well as broken down camping tents, partly buried in a mound of branches as well as dust. A large male bear, identified Bear 141, securing the campsite, was killed by park rangers during their attempt to obtain the bodies. A second teenage bear was likewise killed a short time later when it charged the park rangers. An on-site necropsy of Bear 141 revealed human body components such as fingers and limbs. The more youthful bear was taken in by other pets prior to it could be necropsied. In the 85-year background of Katmai National Park, this was the very first recognized incident of a person being killed by a bear. Number 8. Donburn Show. In February 2010, in what is called a rare case among animal attacks, an experienced trainer was killed by whale at SeaWorld in Orlando, Florida. According to witnesses, 40-year-old Donburn Show was performing a normal routine in the pool when it all went wrong. Eyewitness accounts vary. Some allege that the killer whale dragged her into the pool by her arm. Others believe she fell in, and some say she was pulled by her ponytail. The 12,000-pound whale named Tilikum had been with the park since 1992 and was known to be a temperamental and possessive animal. Once she was in his grip, Tilikum apparently swung Bernchow around in his mouth, causing a broken jaw, fractured vertebra and a dislocated knee and elbow. She was then pulled under the water and drowned. SeaWorld employees distracted Tilikum and finally coaxed him to another smaller pool. Number 7. Olga Moskalyova. In August 2011, 19-year-old Olga Moskalyova and her stepfather, Igor Tsiganenkov, were killed in one of the most horrifying animal attacks ever, in a remote area of East Siberia. The pair had been fishing by a river and was attacked when they returned to the spot to retrieve a fishing rod. The bear first overpowered her stepfather, breaking his neck and crushing his skull. The young woman tried to flee but was unable to outrun the bear. She managed to call her mother on her mobile phone while the attack was taking place. During this phone call, Moskalyova screamed, "Mom, the bear is eating me. Mom, it's such agony. Mom, help." Her mother initially thought it must be a joke, but realized the truth of what was happening when she heard the sounds of the bear growling and chewing in the background. The bear summoned her 3 cubs who began devouring the body while still alive. Her mother called the police and begged them to rush to the scene, but it was too late. Number 6. Steve Irwin. The famous crocodile hunter was known for his up-close and personal approach to filming animals in the wild. Steve Irwin, who died owing to one of the most deadly animal attacks, had spent his career tangling with all manner of deadly creatures. Tragedy finally struck when Irwin was filming an underwater documentary near the Great Barrier Reef in Queensland, Australia on September of 2006. He approached a stingray that reacted defensively by striking him with the tail barb. Irwin initially thought it was just a punctured lung, but crew members quickly realized his injuries were serious. They immediately administered CPR and brought Steve to the shore, but it was discovered that the barb had pierced his heart. That caused his thoracic wall to collapse and resulted in the death of this amazing personality, whose funeral was being watched by over 300 million followers live on TV. Number 5. Carlos Sousa. On Christmas Day in 2007, a 4-year-old tiger named Tatiana escaped her open-air enclosure and attacked 3 visitors shortly before closing time. The victims were all young men from San Jose. 17-year-old Carlos Sousa and 2 brothers, Amrit Paul Dhaliwal and Kulber Dhaliwal. When the tiger leapt over the fence and pounced on Sousa, the brothers ran to a nearby cafe. Employees in the cafe called emergency services amid panic and confusion, and security locked down the zoo to keep Tatiana from escaping. When paramedics arrived, Carlos Sousa's body was found by the enclosure with a fatal cut to the jugular vein. Number 4. Bill Scott. Bill Scott was killed in one of the most disturbing animal attacks by a 4.5-meter-long saltwater crocodile in the Northern Territory, Australia in June of 2014. The family was on a fishing trip and were moored in a calm billabong in their boat. According to witnesses, Scott was pulled from the boat and dragged under the surface. Family members tried calling out, but minutes later his body floated to the surface. His wife, Rosalind Scott, described the attack. "This thing just came up from behind the motor and grabbed him." Crocodile attacks had long been an issue in remote and impoverished areas along the Nile in Zimbabwe. But tourists and locals had become too complacent in Australian waters. Number 3. Horatio Chapple. On August 5 of 2011, a party of British schoolboys on an adventure holiday in Svalbard, Norway, were attacked by a polar bear. Earlier in the week, the group had come across bear footprints in the snow and excitedly taken photographs, but thought nothing further. Despite a makeshift tripwire system at the party's camp, 17-year-old Horatio Chapple was dragged from his tent and mauled to death by a polar bear in one of the craziest animal attacks. According to witnesses, he fought aggressively but was overpowered. One witness stated that he saw the bear rear up and slam itself down on Horatio. 4 other people were injured by the bear before it was shot dead with a rifle. Number 2. Swedish zookeeper. A Swedish zookeeper, who was not identified by name, was attacked by a pack of 8 wolves she had raised since they were pups. The female worked for Kolmarden Zoo, and colleagues reported that she always followed standard zoo safety procedures. On the 17th of June, 2012, she entered their enclosure and notified staff as per protocol. When staff attempted to contact her by radio a short time later, she failed to answer and they went to check on her. She was the victim of one of the most disturbing animal attacks. Sadly, they found her remains in the enclosure surrounded by a pack of wolves. Emergency workers had trouble gaining access, and local papers reported that staff was forced to sedate the wolves to remove her body. Number 1. Shaiunna Hare. In June 2009, 2-year-old Shaiunna Hare was killed by her parents' pet python in Florida in one of the most deadly animal attacks ever. Gypsy, an 8.5-foot Burmese python, had escaped from her aquarium and slithered into the toddler's crib during the night. Shaiunna was bitten on her head and torso and strangled. Her mother had taken a sedative and was oblivious to her daughter's struggles in the room next door. Jason Darnell, Shaiunna's stepfather, discovered the child the next morning with Gypsy still wrapped around her head. Darnell stabbed the reptile until he was able to pry it off and called 911. Sobbing to the dispatcher, he said, "The baby's dead." Do share this video with your friends and family, so that they get aware of attacks by dangerous animals. Please don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel by pressing subscribe button and clicking the bell icon. See you in the next video soon.